Good evening, mamas. This is Devin with Homeschool House Calls. We are with Susan from Homeschool and Supermoms, and we're with Veronica.
Hi.
This is Invitation to Play, which is absolutely fabulous. And I'm hoping y'all are going to learn something and enjoy what you learn because I do. And I even have banners. I like talking points. I got all organized. So
That's
anyway,
awesome.
let's see.
Hey,
Wait.
Veronica, welcome. Thank you.
Hi.
But anyway, so we're doing, let's see if it comes up, invitation to play. And anyway, so Veronica, we're so glad you're here with us today.
Thank you. Thank you. I'm excited. Yeah, I don't know. I wrote some notes just to have, so if I start going on and on and on, because when it
Oh, yeah,
comes to
you're
play, I
good.
love to talk about play. So
And I even got my kids over here so I can earlier this week I had like a good morning session and I started pulling it out and showing mamas. So I'm hoping they'll come back and see. But welcome to talking with us. Tell us a little bit about yourself. That's where I was going.
I grew up in Long Beach, and I grew up in a home where my parents were all about play. They're both immigrants, but and they didn't speak English very well, but they did know the importance of play. My mom, or her house was very playful. Like everything was set up for us to just explore and play and go outside as much as we could and explore nature. Obviously, the times are different now, but yeah. And then from leaving my parents' house, I ended up going to UCLA, which is a university here in California. And after that, I was actually studying to be a lawyer, but I decided to become a mom instead. And then a stay-at-home mom. And then I worked at a preschool for a little while and back home. And then now I have my own small business that I've been working on for a year. But since having kids, my house is kind of set up like the way my mom had it. My house, for a lot of people, when they come to my house, they're like, oh, this is like kind of like a preschool. But I like to set up spaces for my kids so they can play independently, but also so they can just be imaginative, spark their imagination, and explore new materials. So I like to bring in different materials that maybe they've never played with before, things like that.
That's awesome. So explain to our mamas, what is invitation to play? What is that term? I mean, I know what that means, but to a mama who's new, what is that going to mean? What is that term going to mean?
Well, so let me back up a little bit before I tell you what it is for our house, right? But when I first started, being a mom, when I first gave birth to my kids, I started reading a lot about Reggio. I don't know how many people are familiar with Reggio. Definitely not an expert, but I fell in love with the idea of having Reggio somehow in my house because my kids weren't in preschool. And when I did start working at a preschool, I realized it wasn't exactly the way I wanted it to be. So I had to I wanted to do that at my house, right? And part of that is just the idea that children are capable of being active participants in their learning. And one of the ways that you can do that is through invitations. So an invitation is setting up a play session for your children, right? To help them explore, help them spark more imagination. And with that, they can come up with new ideas, and you're there and hopefully listening. And you're also a participant, but you're not like what you think of as a teacher, where you're telling them how to play, what to do next, what comes next. No, don't do it that way. Kind of. Does that make any sense?
Yeah.
I hope so.
It does.
But yeah, so that's essentially, it's just setting up a play session for your children that is open-ended and that allows them to, explore new materials and use their imagination. Yeah, that's essentially what it is.
So what kind of elements do you look for? Like if somebody wants to set up their own box. Now I'm going to show y'all some boxes. That's the thing. Okay. If you haven't seen them,
I'm gonna show you some things as well.
You got something.
I'm in my office, so I have a lot of stuff in here.
See this wonderful box. This one was Valentine's Day. I usually buy these for Lacey when there's something going on. So they're like, well, let's see, little hearts and roses, and there's always Play-Doh, which is good for your hands, and beads, and let's see, I think I had these. Sometimes she adds other things in there that did not belong. But that's okay. There's a little ladybug. And they almost always, well, I don't see them now. She's taken them out. There's usually a little girl, and she loves little girls. Little pegged, where she put them? Here, this is one from another kid. So there's little people in there, and she just comes up with the most creative things listening to her play. But we started out, the first one, we started out with sea animals, and we had planned to go camping close by this on an island, and we were going to go camping. And so we had that, and we had books. So I lay out some kind of book to go with it. There's, the kit, there's a Play-Doh, and Lacey plays, and a lot of times other people are playing too. I mean, I've seen my teens pick up stuff and play. So that's what invitation to play is like at our house. So.
Yeah. So Veronica, tell us a little bit about invitation to play, because Devin gave us a little taste. You want to expand on that?
Yeah. So what I look for is, first of all, I make sure that the materials are open-ended. But before I tell you just about like what's in what I put in an invitation to play, I'm going to tell you that like the main thing when I say it's open-ended is I really try and listen to what my kids are talking about during play, the questions that they're asking each other. So I'm going to give you an example. We went for a walk recently, and my kids I noticed that they started talking about like bird nests and how was a bird nest made and what do birds do and things like that, right? So from there, I decided, well, I'm going to create a kit for them all about birds. I had a birdhouse, I had different materials to create a nest, I had little birds, and I set it up for them. And sometimes they're not interested, and sometimes they are. Most of the time they are, because my kids love it. But so they go and they start playing, but after a while, that led for them to go outside and look for materials in nature to create their own bird nests. So they left the materials that I had put out for them, and they just that went on for a few days. I brought out some books, some images. It led to us watching YouTube videos about birds and all the different types of birds. And the kit I left out for a few days, and they just played with it for probably about a week, on and off, right? Mm-hmm. And eventually I put it away and I rotated it out. So one of the things I do is I really try to not only listen to the questions that they're asking with each other when they're playing, but also the questions that they're asking me. It doesn't necessarily have to be when you're actually when they're actually playing, but also when you're out going for a walk. I also make sure that they can tell when I put out a kit, an invitation, that it's in a specific area. Every household does it different. I know like some parents they're worried about the mess in the house. So for me, I set it up in their playroom on it's like a sheet kind of, and so they know, oh, my mommy set something up there for me, and my kids know that that's the area, and that they're not going to bring it to the living room because there's Play-Doh and there's different things that can stain or complicate things like that. So I also I try to be flexible and realistic, because sometimes you set something up for your child and then they're not interested, or only they play with it for 30 minutes and you think, oh, well, man, that was a waste of time, right? So, but I know that it has to be like age appropriate, and not all children are going to be able to play with an invitation for hours or even for an hour. So that's something that I look for. I love things that are natural, and wood. I just think that they feel better. I also like things that are sensory based, like Play-Doh and clay. Clay is great because most kids, a lot of kids have played with Play-Doh, but at least what I've noticed is not a lot of kids have ever I'm trying to think if I have any clay here, but have ever played with actual clay and felt clay, and it's a different thing to play with, and it's amazing. And my kids absolutely love it. So I like it for it to be sensory based, open-ended, natural as possible. Things they collect in nature. So a lot of times you go out for a walk and they collect a bunch of stuff and then you eventually just throw it out. I like to save it. I have all my things organized in bins so that when it's time for me to set up an invitation, I can go back and, get the things that they had collected and they remember. They're like, oh yeah, I remember this. So yeah, those types of things. Trying to think. I have something here that I can show you guys. I also like to use trays. If you don't mind, I can grab one and show you
grab one.
Where it's at. So I like to use trays like this. It can be any kind of tray, but there's some of the trays that I like to use when setting up an invitation. And the reason I like these is because you can put the Play-Doh in the middle and all the different materials around. It doesn't have to be. I got this at a thrift store, at a vintage shop. But it can really literally be on anything. I like the look of this.
I think it's pretty.
Yeah.
So they're little kits that the kids can interact with, and your invitation is, in my opinion, goodies, not food, goodies that they can play with and interact with. So my question is, what age group might this be applicable to?
I think it could be okay. So my kits particularly are for 3 and up. But when my children were younger, I would still set up invitations, but I just made it, like balls that were bigger, squishy balls, big blocks. I would set it up in a big basket, for example, right? So it is harder when they're younger, but definitely doable. You just have to make sure you're using, bigger materials. I wouldn't even buy toys. When my kids were younger, I used, plastic Tupperware with tops, and then they realize, open and close, right? So it's not necessary when they're younger. It doesn't necessarily. I'm trying to think here if I have something. It doesn't necessarily have to be things like pig dolls and things like that. It can just be even just the box with a few other materials for them to explore and. They start to notice that they can do this, right? So they're with an invitation. I feel like your child is an active participant in their learning, and this is learning, right? If it's a little child, they're realizing, what this is doing. So, when they're younger, totally doable. But I don't think you need to go out and buy a bunch of toys. You just can use it in your kitchen, really. Spoons, boxes, just all kinds. And I'm going to mention a couple books so that you guys can get some ideas.
So on that note, Devin, you and I have talked about the invitation to play before meeting with Veronica here online, and tell us a little bit about your thoughts on age groups and the fun that's taken place in your household.
Well, I set them up. I get them for Lacey. She's my 6-year-old, but I have a house full of teens, and I have noticed and watched teens pick them up too. Now, then you might want to, with Lacey, I got her an ocean book to go along with her ocean kit. And there's the teens, they're sitting there and they're playing with them too. And I'm watching them. And so I think it really depends on the kid. I think, you could go up to, definitely you can include your preteens. Definitely include them.
I think they'd be also really great for special needs, children with special learning needs, and I think they would be absolutely excellent for them also. So kind of, just because I see a question here from one of our group members as to what age group. So really and truly, these neat little kits, as Veronica and Devin have both mentioned, it can be really for any age group from preschool on up, and it's just obviously for, as Veronica mentioned, these younger ages, we've got to be really conscientious of what we put in those little invitations or kits that we put together.
Can I mention one more thing? I just
yes, please.
Some of the things that I did when my daughters were younger. So obviously, like we said, there's the choking hazard and things like that, right? So when my kids were younger, I would put out a big tray with oatmeal sometimes, or with flax seeds. I don't know if anybody knows what flax seeds are, but you can put them in water and they get really gooey. And my kids love to put their hands in there, and it's not a choking hazard. And you can put bowls and different kinds of bowls, wooden bowls, spoons, and then it is messy, but I would use. I went to the Dollar Tree and I'd get just a big cloth, or I don't know, you can find in your house that you don't really care if it gets ruined. And so there's different ways you can do that. Oatmeal, flaxseed. You can make paint out of fruit. Blackberries, for example, frozen blackberries. I'm trying to think of what else. Yeah, so I think that's it I can think of right now. But
yeah, and I would think you could even go to Dollar Tree and get a plastic tablecloth and have them sit on the plastic tablecloth.
Yeah.
And that way you can it's quick and easy cleanup.
Yes. Also, with my kids, they just didn't put things in their mouth when they were younger. And so I wasn't as worried. So obviously you have to know your own child and if they do that. But my kids, for whatever reason, they just never did. So my kids were playing with smaller items when they were younger than 3. I was always around and there, but yeah, they just never put things in.
And I don't know if some of the mamas watching remember that we had a my fine motor skill workshop a couple of weeks ago, and we were talking about how older kids need those fine motor skills too, because you have to remember we're not using pencils like we were, and pens, and we're on devices, and we don't have that strength. So putting some clay out with this stuff and with all these attractive little things, my teens, I watched them, especially my preteen. Well, she's not a preteen anymore, she is now. She's 13 now, but she would play, and then you put the Play-Doh out there, then they can play with it, and the clay, little mold things, give them a challenge. I'm like, they don't realize that what they're doing is building their fine motor skills and kind of lighten up their imaginations.
I think it's also a great stress reducer. Just something to kind of take yourself away from some of the things that are happening in life right now, and just having that chance to kind of fiddle around with some different gadgets and things like that.
We had a good question. I don't know if you saw it, Susan. It says, do you center them on their interest?
Yes, I do. Yes, I do. That's why I was saying, that's why I try, in a school environment, for example, a Reggio preschool, a lot of times they will document, what's going on, the questions that are being asked, they take pictures. But at home, I just try to listen and see what kind of questions they're asking me and what questions come up with their play. And I try to make invitations based around their interests, but not always. Sometimes I like setting up invitations with caps to, those little squeeze, I don't know what they're called, little squishes. My kids used to have them when they were younger. My husband likes to drink beer sometimes. I take the beer tops and I set them up with, different art materials. So an invitation doesn't always have to include, for example, toys or Play-Doh. It can literally just be all centered around art, right? So back then I would put wine corks, some paint, some glue, and my oldest, she loves art. Absolutely loves art. She could spend hours doing it, and she would create people out of just wine corks. So and I did that because I knew how much she loves art. Does that make sense? so definitely.
Yes, you can even go on a nature walk and pick up little acorns and pine cones and things like that and paint those. I mean, little acorns to me look like little hats and little heads, and you can make them into little faces. And
I have a whole entire bowl here.
So it doesn't have to be expensive. I mean, it doesn't have to be things that you go out and purchase, but it can be actually things that you do on nature walks and, grab rocks and things like that. So I think that's a really neat thing, and allow kids of all ages to be creative, even parents.
Yeah.
Yes, I play.
Well, and the best way for our kids to learn is if they're enjoying themselves and playing. That is a great way for them to learn, because obviously if people are having fun, no matter what age group we are, if we're having fun, we're learning more.
Yeah. for sure. With me at home, like I have a 7-year-old who's about to be 8, and then I have a 5-year-old. And my 7-year-old, for example, she's doing a little bit more harder, difficult math than she was before. And with everything that I do, I try to make it fun. So there's the learning component, and they're still learning through play, but I don't know. I feel like a lot of times we just want them to sit down and do a worksheet and just do that. But then I feel like learning it's not as fun sometimes.
Yeah.
And so I like to try to make it hands-on, whether it's with Play-Doh or with blocks, just different materials, as much as possible.
Yeah.
Yeah, so we have, I'm Devin, I didn't mean to interrupt you here, but we have Veronica with us. If you guys have questions, this is a great time to ask her questions. So drop us a note inside the chat area, because I know that Veronica would be happy to answer your questions. So I just wanted to kind of mention that to give everybody that chance to, drop us a note.
I will mention that at home, I do a lot of rotating. So like I was saying, like you might put something out for your children, they'll play with it for maybe a day, and then they seem like they're bored and they go stale for a while. So I put it away for a little while. Like I have a whole closet where I try to keep it minimal. Their playroom is very minimal, but just because for my own sanity, and also I feel like they play better when it's not full of all kinds of materials, because then what happens is they just bring everything out and then nothing really gets played with. So I keep it minimal, and I rotate the invitations as much as I can.
Yeah, I like that. So if a mama wants to dig deeper, what type of information can we send them to? What blogs, YouTube channels? I know you said you had one. You had a YouTube channel.
I did, and I feel like I'm gonna start doing it, because I have an Instagram and I post a lot about the things that my children do on there. And I get a lot of questions about, are you gonna go back on YouTube? And I've just gotten busy during this pandemic. I was home for a long time with my kids, and also I have a little side business as well, and I just got busy, and I don't know, life happens. But I am going to go back to YouTube, and I love sharing different invitation ideas. But there are some great books, and there is one book that I wanted to recommend, and I thought maybe I would put a list together and maybe email it to you, and you can share it to everybody. But there is one book that I really like called Loose Parts, and there's 4 different loose part books, if I'm not mistaken. You can get it on YouTube. It's an amazing book, because are you guys familiar with it or
no? But I'm going to go find it.
It's an amazing book because it gives you so many ideas of materials that you can add to an invitation. I mean, everything. Most of it is recycled, things in nature, things that you wouldn't even think of, like screws and things like that. Like my daughter, my youngest, when she was younger, she used to absolutely love Play-Doh and just different kinds of nuts and bolts. She loved playing with nuts and bolts and Play-Doh. So this book gives you all kinds of ideas. It's an amazing book. So that's
okay. So I'm Mama's. I'm going to. This is Veronica's website. I'm sure she will. You probably have a newsletter list, and you can join, and then you'll find out when she has the YouTube stuff up, and you can find her on Instagram, because she has a wealth of information, and we were very happy she came to talk to us today.
My Instagram is different from my website. It's actually Natural American Baby, and that was because my YouTube channel was named Natural American Baby.
Okay, yeah, I need to put that one down. I will make sure y'all have that. But if y'all have questions, jump on here real quick and ask us, because we can wrap it up and we can have a fun, Saturday. We don't want to stay inside every Saturday, right? No questions?
I want to mention one more thing before I forget. Another thing about an invitation is also having a space where your child can express themselves. What I mean by that is, I love to, even as small as your house may be, or it's big or small, I like to have one area where they could have paper, pencils, just different materials that they can go and create without the direction of an adult. and that helps with independence. So for us, we always had an art room. We don't have an art room anymore because this is now my office, but I still have a desk where I set up not only invitations, but I also have materials that my girls can just easily go and create whatever they want, without having to come to me and asking me, where's the paper, where are the pencils, where's the glue, things like that. And it really is a game changer for sparking their imagination, coming up with new ideas. Independence. So I would definitely, that's a big one for me.
Now we got some, let's see, I'm missing it. There was same question. Yes, you do. You get to center them on your child's interest, and I believe you could center them on what you're studying in school. I know I just picked up a space one from Veronica for what we're going to go over in the next couple of months. But yeah, you can totally center things around interest.
So on that note, so people can buy kits from Veronica if they don't wish to create them on their own, correct?
Yes, but you can also create them, and they're very simple. Like mine, my new ones are a lot of wood because I prefer wood as much as possible. But if you don't want to do that, you could go to the Dollar Tree. They always have all kinds of materials there, and don't just stay in the little toy section. Go to the gardening section as well. The boxes that you get from Amazon when you order stuff, I usually keep them, not all the time, but I usually will keep them. I will use the bubble wrap. I'll cut it and I'll put it in invitations. I also use all kinds of just natural stuff. I let my kids, color different materials. I'm trying to think of what I have here. My office is a complete mess. But so here's something I use. Like this is something my daughter wanted. We cut a bunch of these and she painted rainbows all over them. And now they're used in her block play, right? So whenever I set up an invitation or even buy materials for the kids, I always try to think of, is this going to last? How long will this last? Will it grow with my children? So for example, I know that things like mushrooms and peg dolls will grow with my children. They're open-ended. They can play with them all sorts of ways. This can be in a forest, theme play kit, or it can, you can do a whole kit on a whole curriculum on mushrooms, for example. I have one on mushrooms. And when I created the curriculum for mushrooms, I thought, well, how are they going to be able to use this later on for their play? So it's great for mom and dad because they want them to learn about the life cycle of the mushroom. But for the child, how are they going to be able to use it later, right? So
that's a great point. That's a great point. And to kind of go along with that mom's question about, do you follow your child's interest? I also think if there's an area that, like let's say that they're not passionate about a certain subject, like in history, and maybe you're getting ready to talk about the Mayflower or something like that, you could create an invitation all based on that to kind of trigger that interest also.
Yes. So more fun.
Yeah. So because like you said earlier, Veronica, it's not always fun to do a worksheet or things like that, where if you can kind of spark that interest of, put some color pages in there with crayons and spark, well, where'd this ship come from? Or, just different things like that.
Yeah, 100%. Actually, I should have mentioned that. But yes, sometimes there are topics that maybe I want my kids to learn about that they haven't asked about. So I will set up invitations around that. For example, my daughter was learning about Cesar Chavez, my oldest, and it was something very short. Like they did like a few minutes of learning about who Cesar Chavez was. But when she came home, I had set up an entire thing for her to explore and learn just books and images and materials. And she decided she wanted to make out of a shoebox with her peg dolls, like people marching and things like that. So yeah, I definitely do that as well. I will bring up topics that maybe they haven't even asked.
So we had a good comment. Love these ideas, trying to get my child away from the iPad. Thank you. Yes, we all try to get our children away from the iPad.
And what a great way to do it.
I mean, fun way to do it, to give them something fun.
Yeah, because, a lot of us didn't have iPads when we were young, and we had so much great fun with just playing. And so what a wonderful way to do it.
With the iPad, like my kids do watch television for sure. Mm-hmm. But I love when they're bored. For me, boredom is amazing because it helps them figure out what to do, right? Yeah. Instead of me trying to entertain them or figure it out for them, they're kind of forced to figure out, like, well, I have to come up with something, So boredom isn't always a bad thing. But my daughter earlier today was asking for the iPad. I said, no, I'm sorry, it's not the time that we're going to watch television right now. It's daytime, and I want you to go outside, or you have your playroom, or you're outside, or whatever you want to do. And she was bored for at least a good 30 minutes, and then eventually I saw her outside looking for bugs. So, so yeah. But the kids, the reality is that sometimes that still doesn't work, right? And you need to make dinner, or you need to, I don't know, we're all stressed out, different things. And the kids do help. The invitations do help with that, for sure, 100%. And it can lead to other learning opportunities. So,
yeah.
And it's a great way to get your youngers involved, so you can, educate if you're homeschooling and you need to get your youngers, or, whatever, people occupied, so you can teach a subject to another child. That's a great way to entertain them too. Yeah.
I'm trying to teach my daughter math, and I have my 5-year-old, and some of the math that she's learning, I'm just like, well, what is this? So it's a lot of times I have to concentrate. Like, I don't know if you guys are familiar with Common Core math.
Yeah.
Not my favorite.
I've seen it. I'm like, oh my goodness, what am I going to do with this? But anyway, okay, mamas, we have had a wonderful time together. But nobody's asking questions. She has given you great resources. I think this is a wonderful thing. It's something we do at home. And she's given me some ideas to kind of build on today. I'm excited.
Yeah. Try to go out, rocks, blocks, anything recycled. Kids sometimes will play with the box that the stuff comes in versus the actual item that you bought. So, yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
So don't look at that stuff and think, oh, I can just throw this away. It might be an invitation to play. Just waiting to happen.
Absolutely.
Okay, well, bye, mamas. I enjoyed having time with y'all, and we look forward to seeing y'all soon.
Veronica, thank you so much.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate it. I was a little nervous, but
great. Thanks all you mamas for joining us.
Bye,
everybody.
Bye.